February 2nd, 1942. A gusting, bitter wind shears across the runway at Naval Air Station Norfolk, Virginia. It thunders against the flat-sided fuselage of a U.S. Army Air Force's B-25B Mitchell bomber, parked incongruously at the edge of the Navy's tarmac. The aircraft looks like a beached whale, too big, too heavy, too brown, for a place accustomed to sleek blue and gray F-4F Wildcats. Standing near a jittery staff car, hood ornament shivering in the cold, is Naval Captain Duncan Royce. He clutches a thin folder, its contents already memorized, and his gaze is fixed on the bomber. His orders, delivered in the clipped, urgent tones of a panicked Washington, echo in his mind. Find out if this thing can fly off a boat. It's a preposterous, almost insulting question. A B-25B weighs 32,000 pounds fully loaded. It has a wingspan of nearly 68 feet. It's designed to eat up 2,400 feet of concrete runway. The newest carrier in the fleet, the USS Hornet, has an 824-foot flight deck, but you can't use all of it. Between the island superstructure and the forward gun mounts, the practical space for a takeoff run is, at best, 600 feet. At sea, in a pitching swell, it's closer to 500. Royce is a man of physics, a man of the sea. He knows what happens when you run out of runway. You don't just land, you drop like a stone, consumed by the ocean in seconds. The rumble of engines approaches. A second B-25B, this one flown by an Army test pilot, lines up at the far end of the runway. On the pavement, sailors have painted a crude, hasty outline, a stark white rectangle, representing the maximum dimensions of the Hornet's deck. Royce watches, his jaw set. He's not the only one. Standing a few yards away, radiating a coiled, impatient energy, is the man tasked with leading this impossible mission, Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle. Doolittle is an engineer, a record-setting aviator. He believes in slide rules and horsepower. He believes it can be done. Royce believes in his men. He knows the Navy pilots. He knows that landing on a carrier is controlled terror. Taking off is a leap of faith. But this is asking men to defy gravity. The B-25's twin Wright R-2600 Cyclone engines scream to a crescendo. The brakes release. The bomber lurches forward, heavy, sluggish. It claws at the pavement. You're inside that cockpit. You're the pilot. The deck you're on isn't moving at 20 knots into the wind. It's static. Dead. You have no headwind assist. The painted white lines marking the edge of the carrier rush toward you. The controls feel like they're set in concrete. The nose wheel is jittery, hard to keep straight. You're fighting the torque, fighting the wind, fighting the sheer weight of the machine. The end of the deck marking is just yards away. The pilot hauls back on the yoke. The B-25 staggers into the air. It mushes, hanging on its propellers, barely clearing a theoretical deck edge by what looks like inches. It's a terrifying, sloppy success. Doolittle claps a fellow Army officer on the back. See? Plenty of room. But Captain Royce isn't celebrating. He's staring at the black skid marks on the runway. They aren't straight. They weave. The pilot was S-turning, constantly correcting the nose wheel, desperate to stay on a center line that wasn't there. Every correction, no matter how small, bled precious knots of speed. He walks over to the test pilot, who is wiping sweat from his brow despite the freezing air. "What was the trouble, Lieutenant?" "Sir," the pilot pants, I can't tell where I am. I've got no guide. I'm afraid of drifting, catching a wing on the island. By the time I know I'm straight, I'm almost out of room." Royce nods slowly. He looks at the vast, empty expanse of the runway. Then he looks at the single painted rectangle. The pilots weren't just fighting their aircraft, they were fighting their own perception. Doolittle wants more horsepower, less weight. He's talking about stripping the planes of armor, guns, even radios. Royce looks at the problem differently. He isn't an aviator, he's a sailor. And a sailor knows that to navigate a dangerous channel, you don't just aim for the open ocean. You need a line. February 1942. A cramped briefing room at Norfolk, smelling of stale coffee and bulkhead grease. The air is thick with smoke and desperation. In this room, two different wars are being planned. On one side, Lieutenant Colonel Doolittle and his Army engineers are waging a war against physics. They have slide rules, blueprints, and scales. They are tearing the B-25s apart. Every day, more equipment is ripped from the bomber's heavy armor plating. The secure radio sets, even the .30 caliber tail gun, replaced by a pair of broomsticks painted black to look like guns. They are trading safety for range. They are trying to make the plane fit the mission. Captain Duncan Royce is waging a war against perception. He's not in the hangar. He's staring at a schematic of the USS Hornet's flight deck. To everyone else, it's 894 feet of steel. To Royce, it's a psychological trap. He replays the test pilot's words, "I can't tell where I am." Royce, a career naval officer, understands the terror of the island. The Hornet's island superstructure, the command center, the bridge, the funnels, is a solid, unmoving mass of steel rising stories high on the starboard right side of the deck. You're that B-25 pilot. You are strapped into a cockpit 15 feet off the deck. Your 68-foot wingspan feels a mile wide. Your left wingtip, port side, is what you're focused on. If you drift just a few feet left, your wing misses the deck and catches the water, flipping the entire 30,000-pound aircraft into the sea. But if you drift right, your right wing, starboard, will collide with the island. The result is instantaneous, catastrophic. A fireball on the deck, a mission-ending disaster before you've even left the ship. So what do? Instinctively, you cheat. You edge away from the island. You steer just a little to the left. You give the island a wide berth. But that little bit of steering, that subtle S-turn of the nose wheel that Royce saw in the skid marks, is a thief. It robs you of speed, and in a 500-foot takeoff, speed is not just a number, it is life itself. Royce grabs a piece of chalk and walks to a small blackboard. He isn't thinking about aerodynamics. He's thinking like a harbor pilot guiding a battleship into a narrow berth. He draws the deck. He draws the island. He draws the B-25 positioned for takeoff. The problem he realizes is that the pilot is being forced to make two calculations at once. 1, am I going straight? 2, am I clear of the island? He's failing at both. He needs to be relieved of the second question. Royce erases the drawing and starts again. He draws a single long white line. This is the center line. This is what the nose wheel must follow. It's not in the center of the deck. It is offset, calculated to provide the maximum possible run. But that's not the solution. That's just the start. He draws a second line, parallel to the first, further to the left. This line is the work of a sailor, not an aviator. This second line, he calculates, will be painted on the deck precisely where the B-25's portside landing gear wheel should roll. He measures the distance from the port wheel to the port wingtip. He measures the distance from the starboard wingtip to the island. His chalk scrapes. He does the math again. If the pilot keeps his nose wheel on the first line and his port wheel on the second, Royce puts the chalk down. His starboard wingtip will clear the Hornet's island by exactly 5 feet. It's not much, but it is known. He's taken the guesswork, the geometry of fear, and solved it. The pilot no longer has to look at the island. He no longer has to worry about his wing. His entire world, his entire focus is now reduced to one simple, terrifying task. Keep the wheels on the white lines. It is a simple, elegant, and profoundly human solution. He's not fixing the plane. He's fixing the pilot's mind. He takes his crude chalk drawing to the Hornet's skeptical task force command. It is so simple, so unmilitary, that it is almost laughable. They are discussing billion-dollar warships, complex bomb sites, and grand strategy. And Captain Duncan Royce is proposing paint. March 1st, 1942. Naval Air Station, Alameda, California. The B-25s are not flying onto the USS Hornet. They are being loaded. One by one, massive dockyard cranes hoist the 16 bombers, wings dangling precariously, and lower them with agonizing care onto the flight deck. Doolittle's pilots, the 80 men of the Special Aviation Project, watch from the pier. They are Army men, landmen. They've been practicing for weeks at Eglin Field in Florida, launching from runways painted with the outline of a carrier deck. But this is not a simulation. The Hornet is a living thing, breathing with the slow swell of the San Francisco Bay. The deck is not flat. It's cambered, curving slightly to shed water, and it is short. God, it is short. As his bomber, the Ruptured Duck, is chained down, Lieutenant Ted Lawson stares at the deck. What he sees stops him: paint. Sailors on their hands and knees are applying fresh, brilliant white lines to the dark, oil-stained teak wood. This is Captain Duncan Royce's invention, now made real. It is not just one line, it is a set of two. The first line, the dominant one, is offset to the port side. This is the center line, meant for the B-25's nose wheel. The second parallel line is for the port main landing gear. Lawson, a pilot, instinctively walks the line. He plants his feet where his wheels will be. He turns his head, sighting past the cockpit area toward the island superstructure. His starboard wingtip will clear the unyielding steel of the command bridge by 5 feet. He paces the length. 467 feet. That's the total run he will get, not 600, not 500. 467 feet from his starting blocks to the bow. Royce's lines are not a suggestion. They are a contract. A contract that reads, keep your wheels on this paint and your wingtip will not hit the island. This simple visual guide fundamentally rewires the pilot's brain. It takes the paralyzing, complex equation of drift, speed, alignment, and clearance, and boils it down to a single binary task. Stay on the lines. The terror of the island is gone. The fear of drifting off the port side is gone. All the pilot's fractured attention is now laser-focused onto one point, seen through the small forward window of the B-25's cockpit. Later, in the claustrophobic confines of the hangar deck, packed in with his men, Doolittle is blunt. This mission is one way, he says, his voice cutting through the hum of the ship's ventilators. We fly to Japan, drop our bombs, and then proceed to China. We will have to ditch or crash land. Every man here is a volunteer. If anyone wants to back out, you can do so right now. No questions asked. His eyes scan the faces of his 80 men. Not a single man moves, but they all know the truth. Before they can even think about China, before they even see Japan, they must pass the test. They must pass the test of the first 467 feet. April 2nd, 1942. The Hornet and her escorts, Task Force 16.2, slip under the Golden Gate Bridge in a shroud of fog. She is bound for the most dangerous water in the world, the North Pacific. For the 16 pilots on her deck, there has been no carrier practice. There will be no go-arounds. Their very first takeoff from an aircraft carrier will be the one that counts. April 14th, 1942. Deep in the North Pacific. Position, classified. This is not a cruise. This is a descent into a gray, liquid hell. The Hornet and the Enterprise, part of Admiral Bull Halsey's Task Force 16, are plowing through 30-foot seas. The wind doesn't just blow, it shrieks, a constant 45-knot gale that tears spindrift from the tops of the waves and flings it like glass shards against the steel bulkheads. For the Army pilots, this is a special kind of misery. They are landlubbers, and they are hopelessly, violently seasick. They are not in comfortable berths. They are living in makeshift quarters, some practically under their B-25s, which are chained down on the flight deck, exposed to the elements. Every day the pilots climb into their cockpits. They run the engines, blowing the stacks to keep them clear of moisture. The sound of the twin cyclones immediately ripped away by the wind, and they stare. They stare at Captain Royce's painted white lines. On the flat, stable ground of Alameda, the lines were a comfort, a solution. Here, in the heaving chaos of the Pacific, they are a terrifying joke. The deck is never still. It rises, falls, twists. One moment, the bow is plunging into a trough, sending a green sea, a solid wall of frigid ocean water crashing over the deck, soaking the planes, the men, and the very lines they must follow. The next, the bow is pointing at the sky, the deck angled so steeply it seems impossible to even walk. You're a pilot, huddled in the cockpit, trying to stay warm. You're watching a Navy F-4F Wildcat take off on patrol. The Wildcat is light, it's designed for this. It hits its takeoff speed in less than 300 feet and leaps into the air. Your B-25 weighs 3 times as much. The Navy deck crews, the blue shirts and yellow shirts, watch the Army men with a mixture of pity and professional skepticism. They know their ship. They know the math, and they know that what these men are about to attempt is not aviation. It is a prayer. Royce's lines are now the only piece of solid geometry in a world of violent, unpredictable motion. The pilots walk the lines again and again, their feet unsteady on the slick teak. They pace the 467 feet. They look at the go line. They look at the bow. They look at the gray water churning below. The plan is to launch 450 miles from Japan. But the Japanese have picket boats, patrol craft, spread in a wide arc. If they are spotted, the element of surprise is gone. They are spotted. April 18, 1942. 07:38 local time. 650 nautical miles from Japan. A lookout screams. Enemy vessel bearing 060. It's the Nido Maru, a 70-ton Japanese picket boat. The Hornet's guns open up, but it's too late. The Nido Maru's radio operator is already sending a frantic message. Enemy aircraft carriers sighted. Halsey's voice crackles over the ship's intercom. The plan is blown. The carriers cannot risk sailing 200 more miles into a nest of Japanese bombers and submarines. The order is not a polite request, it is a klaxon. Launch planes. To all Army pilots, man your ships. Launch planes. It is 10 hours early. They are 200 miles further from Japan than planned. They do not have enough fuel to reach China. They all know, in this instant, they will be crashing or ditching in occupied territory or the sea. But first, they have to take off. The Hornet turns into the 40-knot wind. The ship heaves, green water washes over the bow. The first man up is Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle. He climbs into his cockpit. He stares down the flight deck. It is 467 feet of wet, pitching wood, bracketed by 2 simple white painted lines. April 18, 1942. Ayucho 8:20 local time. The deck of the USS Hornet is a symphony of controlled chaos. The 40-knot wind howls, mixing with the guttural roar of Doolittle's 2 Wright Cyclone engines. The B-25 Assad 40 to 344 shudders, straining against its brakes. You are Jimmy Doolittle. You're 45 years old, a man of precise calculations, and all your math is now useless. You're launching too early, too heavy, and too far out. You cannot see the horizon, only a wall of gray water as the Hornet's bow plummets into a trough. Then it sweeps upward, climbing a 30-foot swell. In front of you, standing on the slick, wet deck, is the Navy Flight Director, Lieutenant Edgar G. Deck Clear Johnson. He is a small figure in a yellow jersey, his arm raised, fist clenched. He is not looking at you. He is watching the ship. He is timing the pitch and roll of an 800-foot carrier as if it were a child's swing. He's waiting for the upswell, the precise moment the bow reaches the absolute peak of its climb, creating a momentary ramp into the sky. Your eyes are not on Johnson. They are riveted to the 2 white lines painted on the wood, Captain Duncan Royce's lines. They are your entire universe. They race away from your nose wheel, converging in the wet spray at the end of the deck. This is the contract. The deck rises. Johnson's hand drops. He doesn't wave. He throws his arm forward. Go! Doolittle releases the brakes. The B-25 lurches, then screams forward. The nose wheel jerks, trying to break free, but Doolittle's feet are jammed on the rudders. He is not flying. He is driving. His entire focus. Keep the nose wheel on the right-hand line. Keep the port wheel on the left-hand line. The deck is slick with spray. The island flashes by his right peripheral vision, a gray steel blur. He doesn't look. He trusts the lines. He trusts Royce's math. 5 feet of clearance, 400 feet. The end of the deck isn't approaching, it's leaping at him. The B-25 is a rumble, but it feels sluggish, heavy. It is not at takeoff speed. It cannot be at takeoff speed. 467 feet. He is out of wood. Doolittle hauls back on the yoke. The B-25, its engines at full military power, does not fly. It mushes. It clears the bow and sinks. The sailors on the Hornet's gun tubs gasp. Their stomachs drop with the plane. The bomber's main wheels are now below the level of the flight deck. It hangs, propellers clawing at the thick, salty air, just feet above the churning, white-capped waves. 1 second. 2. The bomber seems frozen, refusing to die, refusing to fly. 2. Then the right engines bite. The wings find purchase. The nose ever so slowly begins to rise. Doolittle is airborne. He's climbing, banking away. A single, impossible brown bomber against a vast gray sky. On the deck of the Hornet, a sound erupts that is louder than the wind. It's the roar of thousands of Navy sailors. They have just witnessed the impossible. They have just seen a 16-ton Army bomber launch from 467 feet of pitching steel. Captain Duncan Royce's simple, elegant lines, they worked. But the celebration is short. The deck crews are already sprinting, pushing the next plane, Ted Lawson's ruptured duck, into position. Lawson is next. He saw Doolittle fall off the deck. He saw the dip. Now it is his turn. He throttles his engines up, his eyes finding the start of those two beautiful, terrible white lines. It is 0824. Lieutenant Ted Lawson, gripping the yoke of the ruptured duck, is already moving. The deck crews in a frantic, disciplined ballet push his 16-ton bomber over the wet, shifting wood, lining his nose wheel up with the start of the painted contract. He saw Doolittle's dip. He felt it in his stomach. He knows the B-25 is not at flying speed when it leaves the bow. It is a controlled fall, a leap of faith into the void, trusting that the wind and the engines will catch you before the sea does. The deck heaves. Spray, cold as a needle, lashes his windscreen. His twin engines are a deafening, vibrating roar, pouring every ounce of their 3,400 horsepower into the air, but the plane is held static, straining against the brakes. You are Ted Lawson. Your knuckles are white. You are trying to ignore the 40-knot crosswind that is trying to push your aircraft sideways to skid you right off the lines before you even start. You are ignoring the island 5 feet from your wingtip. You are ignoring the sea. Your entire world, your entire focus, your very life is the painted white line under your nose wheel. The flight director, Johnson, is a blur of yellow. He's watching the bow. He's waiting for the peak. The Hornet rises, hangs. His arm swings down. Go! Lawson releases the brakes. The ruptured duck catapults forward. He is fighting the rudder, fighting the skid, his eyes welded, he would later say to that left-hand line. The line is his savior. It is his guide. It is the only thing that matters. He doesn't have to think about the island. Royce's line has already done the thinking for him. The deck rushes at him. 300 feet. 400 feet. The end is there. He pulls back on the yoke. The plane lurches into the air, clears the bow, and plummets. He is now flying level with the waves. The aircraft is mushy, unresponsive. The props are churning spray. He is flying on sheer engine thrust, a 16-ton rock, refusing to sink. He doesn't climb. He just holds on, his eyes forward, waiting for the plane to build the precious few knots of speed it needs to be a plane again, and not a bomb. It takes an agonizing 10 seconds. Then the nose comes up. He's flying. On the Hornet's deck, there is no time for cheering. This is not a demonstration. This is an evacuation. Plane number 3, Whiskey Pete, is already being manhandled into position. Then number 4, the Hari Kari Air. Then number 5, the 0 to 2300. It becomes a rhythm, a terrifying industrial process of launching miracles. Each pilot, in turn, trusts his life to the same equation. Each man straps in, throttles up, and stares down the same 2 lines. Each man hits the end of the deck, sinks toward the sea, and claws his way back into the sky. This is the true genius of Duncan Royce's invention. It isn't just that it works, it's that it is repeatable. It is a system. It has taken the impossible subjective terror of the launch and turned it into a standardized binary procedure. Keep the wheels on the paint. The process is fast, terrifyingly fast. By 0919, just under an hour since Doolittle launched, the 16th and final B-25, the bat out of hell is at the line. The deck is now dangerously short, but the lines are still there. The pilot, Lieutenant Donald Smith, throttles up. He gets the signal. He launches. One last time, a B-25 dips. Its props just feet from the waves and fights its way into the air. And then, silence. The Hornet's deck, once a crowded, thundering parking lot of brown bombers, is now utterly empty. The ship immediately swings hard to starboard, turning away from the enemy. Its F-4F Wildcat fighters already being raised on the elevators to form a protective shield. The Navy's job is done. The Doolittle Raid is now just 16 specks of brown, flying west in pairs and singles, low against the water, toward an empire that believes it is untouchable. The impossible launch is over. The impossible mission has just begun. April 18th, 1942, midday, Tokyo, Japan. The day is clear, bright. Children are playing, and civilians are going about their business. The war is something distant, a series of glorious victories reported from the Philippines, from Singapore, from the Dutch East Indies. The homeland is sacrosanct, protected by the divine and by the world's most powerful navy. An air raid drill, which had just concluded, is treated as a minor inconvenience. Then the sound. It's a low, unfamiliar rumble, not the high-pitched whine of the Japanese Zero. It's the throaty, deep-chested roar of twin-engine bombers. They are not high in the stratosphere. They are low. They are coming in at rooftop level, their brown and green camouflage stark against the urban sprawl. Panic is not immediate. It is confusion. These are American planes, but that's impossible. The nearest American base is thousands of miles away. It's a logistical, geographical, physical impossibility. Then the bombs begin to fall. Doolittle's raiders, now scattered, fly over Tokyo, Yokohama, Nagoya, and Kobe. They are not carpet bombing. This is not a fire raid. They are striking specific pinprick targets. Steel mills, oil depots, factory yards. The physical damage is, by the standards of a total war, negligible. But the psychological damage is immeasurable. In that moment, the entire Japanese war plan is rendered obsolete. The belief in their invulnerability, the core propaganda that the Emperor's Islands were untouchable, is shattered in the smoke of a few dozen 500-pound bombs. This is the true victory. It's not the steel mill that's damaged. It's the certainty that is broken. The Japanese high command is thrown into a state of panic. They must now pull valuable fighter units back from the front lines to defend the homeland. They must accelerate their plan to destroy the American carriers. This shock, this humiliation, will lead them directly and disastrously to the Battle of Midway. And back in America, the news breaks and a nation starved of any good news is electrified. America has been reeling since Pearl Harbor, a succession of defeats and retreats. Now this. President Franklin D. Roosevelt is asked at a press conference where the planes came from. He smiles a broad, confident grin and says only that they came from a secret base, a new base. Shangri-La. The nation erupts. It is a stunning, almost defiant victory of morale. But in the halls of the Navy Department, the men who knew, they understood the truth. They knew the raid did not begin over Tokyo. It began in the mind of a single naval captain. It began at Norfolk with skid marks on a runway. It began with the simple revolutionary idea that the greatest obstacle wasn't the plane's weight or the deck's length, it was the pilot's fear. Captain Duncan Royce's simple paint, his simple invention, had not just solved a geometry problem. It had been the fulcrum. It was the one tiny, simple thing that allowed the entire, complex, desperate gamble to work. Without those lines, the planes are at the bottom of the Pacific. Without those lines, the island is hit, the deck is fouled, the mission is over. Without those lines, Tokyo does not burn, Midway is not fought, and the war unfolds in a different, darker way. The Doolittle Raid, the event that changed the psychology of the entire Pacific War, was made possible not by a bigger engine or a longer deck. It was made possible by 467 feet of white paint. Thank you for watching.